So this is going to be another off the top segment, and I'll be talking about Berkley and what has happened in the past month or two with them concerning students and just the news around it. Let's get into it. What is up, fam? It's Shar, and welcome to Law Living Color, where I provide quick tips and experiences to help you navigate the law school process and legal field as a person of color. So, quick life update. I did get the COVID vaccine. That's why you see this cute little heart band-aid on my arm. It's not really that cute. My arm is excruciatingly in pain. I also got some flu-like symptoms with the vaccine, so if I'm sniffing throughout the video, I am sorry in advance. Trying to get through this. Berkley. So a couple things. First thing, what happened was they sent out a mass email to students that were on the wait list or actually denied by the school, saying they got into the school. So yeah, that's like the big blunder of the, I guess, month or week, is by good old Berkley. And I guess what it was, they followed it up with a whoops. Didn't mean to do that. So my first problem with this is in their blunders in prior history is that it gives people false hope. I mean, if I'm waitlisted and you tell me I'm admitted, I'm sitting up there celebrating for that. Oh wow, I got into Berkley. I'm sitting up here updating people. And then literally like an hour or two later, you email me and say, whoops. Listen, I don't want to harp and be this crow over admissions officers and the admissions folks, but come on, that's cruel and unusual punishment. I mean, like if I got waitlisted to my dream school and then they said I got in and I'm excited, I mean, that type of knife to the heart. My second problem with this is that it's an exploitative process. I mean, like, let's be real. The entire process, we're sitting up here trying to sell ourselves to these schools and hoping that they'll like what they see and give us an offer of extension, an extended offer of admission. And what do they do instead? They mess up. My last qualm with this is that this has been a long cycle and frustrating for many. Just because this cycle turned out to be fairly well for me does not mean that was the case for everyone else. And it just really speaks to the professionalism of everything. I mean, it's not just Berkley. Again, I don't want to just harp on Berkley for this because they're not the only ones that have messed up. Notre Dame recently, the last month or so. But it's just really a problem of, oh, we want you to be the most professional person. You want this amazing personal statement, no flaws, no errors. You want this amazing resume, no flaws, no errors. You want this amazing LSAT score that took me God knows how much time to study for. You want an explanation for this, an explanation for that. You request an interview with me. I'm expected to be in my best professional attire with my best professional voice, ready and willing. But then when the professionalism is switched to your hand, it's like, oh yeah, sorry, whoops. I mean, is there anything more I have to say about that? I mean, like, really, it's just messed up. It's all around messed up to me. So I have my handy dandy laptop here, and you see my eyes going low. It's because I'm reading this letter that student leaders of Berkley posted on the Berkley website, with also having a response by the dean to it. And I made some notes about this letter that I wanted to share with y'all, and my thoughts about it are these notes. And yeah, let me just read the letter. So specifically, this administration has defended the intellectual acceptability of white supremacist views, citing First Amendment arguments. That is the first point of this letter. And what they're basically saying is they probably, I don't know Berkley. I'm not there. I'm not a student at Berkeley Law. But from it sounds like there are people that express hateful speech towards certain groups that are allowed to speak at that school, and what the school says basically is that they can speak at that school because then they would be suppressing their First Amendment right to not speak at that school, in which these student leaders feel should not be the case. We'll get back to that point, but that's basically what they're saying for that first point. Second point. They refuse to compensate students of color leading affinity organizations while leveraging their diversity for institutional clout. Okay, I love the fact that they use clout here. This was my point on talking about the uncompensated word in the beginning of this letter. So basically what they're saying is like, you're exploiting our resources, and you're doing that by having us as this marketing tool for people of color to come here, yet you're sitting up here not really crediting any of our issues and qualms, therefore you should be paying us. So it's an extreme argument, I will say. Third thing, there's 4 that they list, this is the third. Continue to employ an inflammatory defender of torture in an active teaching role. So who they're talking about here is Professor John Yoo, Y-O-O. Okay, I don't know if I'm saying that totally correctly of his last name. But he was under the Bush administration. He is known for writing the torture memos for what qualifies as acceptable methods of torture, which are no longer acceptable. And so a lot of students have had problems with this professor because of that, because he was in an administration, but not from the political stance, but from the stance that he helped promote cruel and unusual punishment. Last point that they make, and has failed to condemn or acknowledge Berkeley's lack of compliance with the Native American Graves Protection and Repatriation Act. Okay. And then it proceeds to say, we'll provide the things that we've done, and it lists all the organizations that are affiliated with this statement. The dean's response is to the 4 things that the students addressed. The first being the institution's intellectual acceptability of white supremacist views. The dean responds, I recognize that hateful speakers cause real harm, but the law of the First Amendment is clear that a public university cannot exclude speakers even when their views are deeply offensive. To say that the First Amendment protects the rights to express a view in no way endorses the intellectual acceptability of that view. He's saying that he does not endorse what is being said by these quote-unquote white supremacists or their views. And because that he is legally forced to allow them to speak does not mean that he aligns with those views. So, I guess, Berkeley is a public institution, so therefore they cannot override what the law states because it applies to public universities. So, with that being said, their qualm with this is something that I completely understand, as I attended a public university, and as I'm sure others have, where someone will come to the university and speak and have a lot of hateful rhetoric in their speech. And yes, you are not at all forced to go to these speeches whatsoever. However, having that rhetoric pushed around campus does make a student, such as myself, a person of color as myself, feel alienated from peers, because certain peers will go to that meeting and listen to that speech and agree with those viewpoints. And it just doesn't make me feel like I'm in a safe space or a safe environment to actually further communicate my viewpoints or expressions. Then he addresses the second. Again, this is a very concise response to the student leaders. Okay, so the second point was that the student leaders said that they're not compensated for all the things that they do, yet the school uses them basically to attract students for institutional quote-unquote clout. The dean responds, the law school does not compensate the leaders of any student groups. I support finding ways to recognize the tremendous hard work of students who lead affinity groups and other organizations, but monetary compensation is not possible. We have over 90 student organizations. We could not compensate leaders of affinity groups without compensating law review editors, moot court boards, or leaders of all student groups. Okay, my problem with this was, it wasn't that really specific. Okay, bro, Berkeley's getting a lot of money. I know, yeah, these things can't be paid, but I think he was harping on what the student leaders wasn't. I think he was focusing on a quote-unquote making a red herring in the argument, because I don't think the student leaders' whole point was to be compensated. I think the whole point was that their effort was being exploited. And that exploitation has to do with the effort that they put in, and they are actually attracting students to the school, bringing in money for Berkeley. However, they're not getting any type of recognition. They're not getting anything. So therefore, they're like, okay, well, if you're not going to do that, you might as well compensate us. That's the least you could do. That's what I feel like their argument is, and I feel like the dean is harping on the compensation part, which a lot of people did harp on, but I don't think that's the student leader's argument. So with that, I don't really, side with this response to the student leader's argument. The third one, the student leaders refer to John Yoo and, their problems with him, siding with like cruel and unusual punishment, right, and the torture memos, and how they want them removed, and the dean responds to that. He says, third, the professor referred to is a tenured member of the faculty of the University of California. The University Council has been clear that there is no legal basis for revoking his tenure based on views he expressed during government service. I don't think the student leaders were discussing it as this is John Yoo's political view and we don't like him. It was more like John Yoo has committed a crime against humanity and we don't mess with him for that, and nor should the school. So the next one talks about the Native American Graves Protection Repatriation Act. Okay, his response. Finally, members of the law faculty are actively involved. He said activity involved, so yeah. Actively involved in ensuring that the campus complies with the Native American Graves Protection Repatriation Act. I strongly support this. That's it. He didn't say how they do. He didn't say what methods they have used to do that. He didn't say any type of initiatives that they're doing. None of that. He just said, yeah, we align with that, and I agree with it. So I didn't really like the backlash the student leaders were getting for this letter. I generally understood their arguments. However, did they have holes in their arguments that could literally be misconstrued and just destroy their arguments? Of course. Their points were not, they contained way too much vague language. The fact that I had to interpret what they meant by saying they wanted compensation further proves that, yeah, like they don't ever clean over here. Every time. They don't ever clean over here. Like when people would misconstrue it, I understood how they misconstrued it. However, I was like, I really don't think that's what they're trying to say. I don't think that's what they're trying to say. Here's what I think they're trying to say. But the fact that I have to make that interpretation in these amounts of assumptions further proves that their argument was not that solidified and was very easy to respond to. So a lot of people were like, oh, the dean is right. Yeah, the dean answered that perfectly. No, the dean did not. The dean was very, very brief, kind of like dismissive of things. Didn't really give you an answer. He just regurgitated pretty much the problem and said, we don't do that. That's it. So I didn't appreciate that either. I don't like when people don't give me full answers to my questions, and that's what the dean did. So, I see all that to say. That is it, y'all. I hope y'all understood everything that had to do with this video. It was a lot, and it took a good amount of research for me to look through some things. So, hopefully you enjoyed it, learned something. Listen, Berkeley is not the only school that has controversial professors. There's a good amount of schools that have controversial professors. I'll make a video about that as well. If you want to hear it, please comment below. And if you want to see that video, please let me know. Or you can always hit me up on my socials, on my Instagrams, or my TikToks. I make TikTok videos. I try my best to be entertaining. I don't know if it's working. As always, guys, if you like this video and you want to see more like it, please like, comment, and subscribe. And hit that bell to get notified about any videos that I drop. I would end things off with a quote, but I don't know. It's not really quote time today. I'm feeling a little under the weather from the shot, and I'll end things off with my personal quote, which is, get some rest. Get rest when you need rest, okay? Peace, guys.